hate that. I hate that's even worse.
Minimalism versus maximalism in the TTRPG space.
I think the overarching point is there's no right way or wrong way. Just figure out what works best for you and your players, and you'll only ever know that by starting to run the game.
But I also really loved immersing players.
I love the Feywild game, but there was just something about the airships game that just spoke to me on a different level.
Part of me never wants to make another emotional backstory again because, God, this man used it against me. Welcome back to another episode of Above the Table. I'm your general host, Seb, and we have our DM, Cody, back with us again. And today, we're going to be talking...
Minimalism versus maximalism.
We're going to hit topics like roleplay versus combat as the main topic of your game, terrain versus theatre of the mind, and then ultimately the costs involved in all of that. And we'll probably go on tangents, as we tend to do.
This is way more fun that way.
So, let's jump back into Above the Table. Welcome back, guys. So yep, today we're going to be hitting like the minimalism and maximalism, different styles of approaching a game, our thoughts on each. If you've watched our games, you probably tell we're pretty much on par with our thoughts, but we're going to try and talk about both sides of the topic. Give us your thoughts below and increase the conversation. Once we get the two of us back together again, we'll try and answer any questions that you guys are throwing out there and keep conversation going multiple ways.
Yeah, multiple directions. So, item one, which always seems to be one.
We're gonna do something first.
What are we gonna do?
So I want you to put these on.
Oh no, here I was ready to get in and be full professional. I swear to God. I swear to Christ.
Just.
Wow, these are really good reductions.
They're great.
Oh, who's this? Are these Bose?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Bose,
They're great.
sponsor us, bro.
I'd like to know what you think about this. And like, really listen.
Cody got a guitar, no strings attached. AI plays it better,
Play the
but you
music.
won't be mad.
I already know what this is, and I hate you for it.
Vitalize with all his heart, not a code inside. Robots can make so smart, but can't feel a fight. Hey, Cody, don't give in. Keep the human spirit in the sound. Machines can't feel what's within. True
The
music,
fact, how dare you for one? I know exactly what this is because we had a vague conversation about it. That's
Annoyingly good.
I hate the fact that it sounds legitimately like something that would have come out in like 2010. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that.
So, Cody hates AI, particularly in the music space. And we vaguely mentioned last game that there are these new systems. So you guys would have just heard it. I'll put the music over top. This was a free generated song. And my prompt was, give me a pop punk song about a musician named Cody fighting against the AI machine as it takes over the creative industry.
I hate that. I hate that's even worse. The fact that it sounds legitimately good is what hurt my feelings.
I'll show you afterwards as well, because I made a few different ones. I made some heavy metal and some rock.
What blew my mind is the fact that sometimes in some of the instances that I've heard people using AI music, it sounds like you can hear the weird morphing in the voice because it's got so many source codes.
This new version of this one.
I know, it's like a vocoder kind of thing,
Yeah.
like Hatsune Miku and all that sort of stuff where they were programmed to be like flawless. I hate that.
The last version would only give like 2-minute songs and they were a bit janky half the time. You'd have to get the right genres. This new one is like, it blew my mind and it kind of scares me. Like, we're going back to last episode Above the Table kind of a little bit here with
of a
the
callback.
talk of AI, but last time I really wish I'd had this to show Cody.
I would have burnt this whole studio down just out of rage.
But yeah, this is how me and my mate's been using that. So if one of us want to insult the other one, we'll get a AI generated song about that topic and our friend.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is kind of funny. Use it for the meme.
Yeah, what I said? Use it for the meme, it's nice and clean.
Yeah, use it for the meme. It's nice and clean. Use it for the make money and you're a dummy.
But that was just a little something extra that I just wanted to.
I was
Oh,
wondering why. I was
in front
wondering
of that
why you
bus?
had your headphones on.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta get these ready. So,
Fuck.
yeah, there's a taste of what AI music's doing. I showed you what the video can do the other day.
Yeah, I hate that.
We've seen what art can do. We know what it can do with generated prompts. That's where music is going with it.
I hate that. No human touch. I don't think an AI could write an absolute caveman fight riff though. That's all right.
I will say.
I don't know. I think you get lost in the 035, the code.
I think there's a line in there that says, there's no soul in the code. There's some good one-liners out of that. Also.
There is no soul in the code. There, I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
That
I
upsets
just love
me.
the opening lines of that one. It's like, well, Cody got a guitar, but AI plays it better.
Fact. I'm not that good at guitar. I'm okay.
But there we go. So there's me just getting a reaction out of Cody for short. But
Content.
back to where we were. Minimalism versus maximalism in the TTRPG space.
Yep.
If you can't tell by our sets and our general thing, we're leaning towards the maximalism side.
Yeah, it's very much so. We've kind of we discussed like how they kind of lead into one another, but I think we'll start with, which is something that I see often, which is heavy RP versus combat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know anyone who's watched a lot of our stuff. We've spoken about like the community as a whole and what we've seen, but I'm in a few Discords where people post that they're looking for games, looking for players, etc., etc., and they always like to put a percentage of combat versus RP. Nearly every single one that I've ever seen, but maybe on one hand I can count how many I've seen that don't have a thing where like 60% combat, 40% RP, or like a 90% RP, 10% combat. It seems to be this weird. It's almost like an encounter that people are trying to master. It's really peculiar. I don't know like how I feel about it, and I don't know.
Well, we know that everyone out there has their own
preference.
So you want to put that out there. So if you're going to join a game with people you don't know, if you want mostly RP and you end up in a table that's mostly combat, you're not going to have a good time. So I feel like on the Discords and the ads out there, that's probably more about just making sure that people are getting
like
a rough idea of what they're coming into.
That's fair. That's a fair statement. But like, I think anyone who watches our series and everything like that realizes that there'll be episodes where there's no combat whatsoever.
Oh, we played one last night where all of us cried.
Yeah, it was insane. Like, I think in the early season when we were like before our Kids on Brooms break, there was 2 episodes or 3 episodes where there was no combat. It was like 4.5 hours of just all roleplay, minimal rolling, all roleplay, and I think there's a strength in that. Like personally, like me, I'm of the mindset that this is just me. Roleplay is king until combat becomes a necessity. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always ran my games. Recently, my other campaign that I run, which is where all my players are in a mercenary company, there was a point where I was running 1 combat every session and there was RP sprinkled around it. But now I've gotten more comfortable with all their play styles and they're comfortable with me as a DM. Now I'm running full sessions where there's just RP and there's no combat. Because, warfare and mercenary companies, it isn't always stabbing and shooting and killing.
But a lot more so than
it's political stuff.
Main game.
Yeah, but our main game is very there's lots of talking.
Yeah.
But for me, it sells. And I think it's good.
I love it.
Or rather, it not sells the sense of making money, it sells the story.
Yeah. So, quick side note, guys. Sorry if you hear some bumping and random background music from upstairs. Roommates up there and it's wooden floors, so we do what we can. I love the storytelling, the roleplay side. Like, combat's fun sometimes, but it also can just drag a bit sometimes. Like, I feel like in our main game, we're getting better at it, but then new things like a new companion creature, suddenly it's going to take a while for
Yeah,
long
exactly.
to get used to that thing. And like whenever you do
Exactly.
a level up, suddenly you've got new spells and new abilities. It's always going to take people a bit longer. That's cool and fun to throw down on the table, but for me, the part that sells this whole game is the roleplay.
Yeah.
Like when you can really get into the skin of someone else and forget yourself and fall into character, and they're the story moments. They're the moments that make, like when I think back over podcasts that I've listened to and watched that I enjoy, the moments where something amazing, like it's the role play moments I remember. I don't remember any of the combat stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a cool map or something, but
Yeah, that's true. See, I've got, for me, combat is, I like, there's key points that I'll highlight in like combat. It's like, I'm a huge Exandria Unlimited Calamity fan. Like that's probably my favorite bit of, I love Critical Role as a whole, but Critical Role content, anything that Brendan Lee Mulligan does for some reason is just gold. Like, and he's coming back to do another 3 episodes, so I'm fanging at the bit for him. But yeah, for me, it's like RP stuff is always the stuff that plays in my head rent-free for weeks and weeks and weeks after the game's already been and gone. Like even last night, I haven't stopped thinking about it.
I will never be able to get Jester and the Dust of Deliciousness scene out of my brain.
Oh,
That's
the cupcake.
Best moment in any, like, those things, or Caduceus at the table.
I was literally about to say Trent Ickathon's little statement. He's
Basically anything with Caleb's history. Like, it's those moments of real heavy roleplay that get me. It's why, like, the game we played last night was the first time I've ever had my character's backstory become this central point of an arc. And my heartstrings were being torn every single which way.
It's weird when you've got everyone looking at you too. Like everyone's looking at you being like, yeah, what are you going to say, buddy? This is your story. This is your bit.
Part of me never wants to make another emotional backstory again because, God, this man used it against me. But for me, roleplay is the point of this game. Otherwise, there's war games. If you just want combat and battle, there's Warhammer, there's one-page rules, there's lots of...
There's a Warhammer RPG called Soulbound where you just play as a champion and you just kill big monsters. Like, play that.
Yeah, and like, if that's how you want to play D&D, by all means. We're not telling you you're wrong, but
No, exactly.
for us, it's the story. It's the story. That's through and through. That's the part that sells me. That's why I've loved this table and really settled in so nicely with these guys that I'd never met before the game. Everyone at the table wants to tell a good story, and if any of us have moments where we're like, that didn't feel like it was right for the narrative, that's been discussed after the fact, and we've figured through it, or even retcon some things because like that really just didn't work.
Yeah. It's about, like, I'm very heavy in, like, having any of the players come to me after a game be like, oh, I don't think I like that bit. I'm like, okay, that's fair, that's fine. As a DM, it is my job to mitigate that, but, you know, in the end, it's in the player's power to change the narrative. So next game rolls along, make your player intervene on that thing and change it. You know what I mean? That's a weird little... It's the whole point, it's conjoined storytelling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are allowed to tell me what you do as much as I'm allowed to tell you what happens to your character. If that makes sense. If that verbiage made any connection whatsoever.
And then the other thing I think, it's tough to bring roleplay into combat sometimes. So sometimes it feels like all this character development's happened, but then in combat you just want to do the coolest thing and win. Whereas I do think it's something we do well at our table as well, is people will put themselves in a bad combat situation because it makes sense to the story.
Yeah.
I'd be more protective of A than I would of B, even though going B would have been a smarter choice. Emotionally, I would have done this.
Yeah, exactly. I whenever I get the opportunity to play, I always try to make an executive call to play on my character's emotion and not on my character's tactical ability. Yeah. So a prime example, in our airship mini arc fight and flight, sorry. Georgia and I, friend of the show, Georgia.
You'll be seeing more of her.
Yeah, you will be seeing more of her. We had a little bit of a conversation to and fro. It's like, oh, maybe our characters have been together for a while because they've been sailing together and they're friends, right? And it happens, like, you know, whenever there was an instance where Shepard was about to get decimated by hard damage, Tommy would be using his reaction to protect her because that's in the story. That's what he would do. Everything he did for her specifically. Because, and we've developed it off camera, but Tommy had a bit of a crush on her. So
Really?
Yeah, really. So now it's a whole thing. So it's good. But it's, yeah, I like, play how you want. But for me, I do it for the stars emoji, drama stars emoji. Can we put that in the bottom?
100%.
Drama.
Me too. Yeah. Give me just a cutaway. Drama.
Drama!
There's our cutaway. I'm the same. 100%. I've run games for people that are predominantly wanting combat. They're fun enough to play. I'll probably get more into that in our next topic, which is more going to be about terrain, because I'm a big terrain guy. But that real deep storytelling moments, whether in roleplay or in combat, like, you guys probably won't have seen it yet, but episode 19 we shot last night. Actually, I think it was 18, this moment of the battle. And there was a big moment with me where then I charged towards the enemy because of a moment of emotion.
Yeah.
Which was not the smart choice, but it fit to what I'd been playing. So, like, I was tossing up before, I was like, do I want to do that as someone who doesn't want Hugo to die? But there's a lot...
If that is your real name.
Spoilers. Although if you've been watching, it has been mentioned twice, I think, in game already.
Yeah, I think so. They were the most astute of listeners. But at this point, hopefully this one will come out after those go live. So it'll be good.
This will probably be out before those, actually.
Yeah, to be fair. Okay, well, there you go.
You'll probably be getting this just before we come back for our second arc, season, whatever we want to call it.
I guess season would be the term, but I say arc, shorter form content.
Yeah, so this will pump out between Kids on Brooms and the return
the
of
finale
the
and the return of the Broken View. Yep. Oh, mate, I can't wait. Like, I love Kids on Brooms, don't get me wrong, but I really badly just want to power getting them uploaded so we can just go back to the Broken View.
Oh, yeah, me
I
too.
just want to
We just
run.
need to give the guys time to make art for our new guest character.
I know. Yeah.
On the topic of what we're doing in the channel, we've just spent the morning building up a new table because going forward from episode 19, so starting at 20, we're going to be filming Tomes and Tales, regular 5e RPG in this room right here.
Yeah, the situation's changed and I've found myself having to move, and unfortunately I have the space to run the games, but it would not be of a quality that works for what we need. So we've made the choice to do it here, and we built a pack-away D&D table that literally is currently just all jammed up in a corner because 90% of it folds away.
A few trestle tables, a couple of random table legs, and a piece of wood, and we
some poor cuts on our part.
Yeah, like, it had no right working out as well as it did with our skill level.
We might just jam a photo in there, like that photo that you took. Yeah.
But we'll throw that up as well. We made a little vlog style build as we put that process together, because we're going to try and pump out as much content on this channel as we can.
Basically, you can't ignore us anymore because we're everywhere you look.
But we want to give more and more anything related to this field. So whether it's how to make a table that works for this, for some of you that might want to run your own games. And, you know, this table's actually set up a lot better that we'll be able to hopefully film it better than
it's actually, it's inspired the next iteration of the permanent table. Yeah, because we're gonna do some design. We're gonna do some redesigning of the new table to fit this new camera design, which just works better for us in the long run.
And all that will also depend on where either Cody ends up living permanently, or if I finally buy a house in this insane market.
Yeah, it depends on who gets there first. But it's probably gonna be one of those things where it's like, I'll probably be able to get a new place to rent first, and then we'll just do it there. And then once you've got everything set up in the new place, we'll just move everything back over there.
If I get something with a good sized studio space, which let's really hope, because between this and Seb Make Stuff, I really do.
You need that space. Need is the word. Needs the word. So it's
there's a little update on Tomes in general.
In general, yeah, that's a little behind the that's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah, I feel like we just sort of arced into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of our take on roleplay versus combat.
Yeah, combat's good. Like, you know what I mean? It is a game based in combat. You're slaying monsters. But I think the overarching point is there's no right way or wrong way to do it. Just figure out what works best for you and your players, and you'll only ever know that by starting to run the game.
I think that's going to be every opinion we ever have on this show. It's not the right answer. We don't have the right answer. We're just sharing our ideas with you guys, and we'd love, again, to hear your thoughts.
We just want you heavy RPers to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, and if you are, like, really against RP, let us know why. Like, is it nerve-wracking? Like, I absolutely understand that it would be for some people. Is it just not feeling confident that you can portray a different character? You don't want to, you know, like, what is it that makes the role-play nerve-wracking, or what is it that makes the combat so much more enticing? Because that's not how we see it.
Yeah, exactly.
So give us the other side of it.
I would love to hear someone's like legitimate justification as to why they don't. But yeah, drop it below, please. We'd love to hear it.
And I think it takes us into the next part. So for roleplay, you don't need anything but the people at the table and some dice. For real heavy combat, sure, you could draw out some
Graph paper maps.
and add a couple of books down to represent a building. But the way we like to play it is terrain.
The capital T, terrain.
So the next topic we were sort of going to bleed into is terrain versus theatre of the mind,
Yep.
which is another big topic out there that we both, I think, are sitting on the same side of the fence, but I go even further.
So, for context, when I started running Dungeons and Dragons many, many moons ago for 3 friends of mine, it was only theatre of the mind. I had no miniatures, no maps, nothing. The only maps I ever used for reference were the fold-out maps that came with the books. You know, the original first campaign I ever went to run was Curse of Strahd. Much too big of an undertaking for me. Couldn't do it. And I ended up going homebrew. And the only thing I had crafted out was a whiteboard with my hand-drawn continent map on it. And it wasn't until after the 3rd or 4th session that one of my players goes, hey man, are you going to get like minis and like a grid map? Because I find it's going to be easier for combat if you do that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. Why not? Like, that's fair.
And so it began.
And so it began. I bought the actual Wizards like folding like hardboard one.
Yep,
the
I have those.
Yeah, which I donated to some friends of mine many moons ago because now I simply don't need them because I've got way more. And that was good. You know, I had a couple of, we used dice to key some points. At one point I made like a popsicle house, like shack for a Knoll encounter. And it wasn't until my friend Jack came along to play, he joined as our artificer for that campaign, that he started bringing a lot of his like wargaming terrain.
That's the big...
And that's where it started. And then the first thing I ever bought was the Warlock Dungeon Tiles set.
Yeah.
And
oh, wow, you went straight into the good shit.
I went straight into... So that was the actual Wizards of the Coast tiles that they released. I bought the first big pack of those, and it just went fucking sky high from there.
Yep.
It just didn't stop. I started crafting more terrain. Then I just started buying Dwarven Forge, 3D printing, all that, buying minis, buying stuff online, and now it's just this... If I could interpose footage of what my collection looks like now, I would, but I've packed half of it away for moving. But Seb can attest, there's a lot. There's a lot. And I've spent a lot of money on terrain just to make the boards cool for this lot when they're fighting monsters.
And a lot of mine comes into it as well. So
yeah, I take a lot of Seb stuff.
I came from a similar side. So as a lot of you out there in the miniature world probably have done, I started with... Do I have them here? Oh no, the Lord of the Rings Warhammer magazines when I was
That's
like
where I started too, yeah.
And they had a few random how to make things, and so I'm going to try and find it. There's a picture somewhere of me and my cousins when we're like 12 or something, with chubby cheeks and bowl cuts, painting minis and making really basic ruins terrain. So I always had that before ever knowing about the gaming side. When I eventually got into D&D, or decided to run a game, which was 5 years ago now? 4 years ago now? Because it was just before that unnamed sickness took over the world.
The Long Wednesday.
Yeah. I pulled out my old collection of minis from the old magazines.
Oh, yep.
So I had a few random Warhammer fantasy models. I think I had some lizard men, some beasts of chaos. But then I had like the orcs, the elves, a few Rohan guys, and a few of the heroes.
Rohirrim!
Yeah, so my first attempt, because I wanted to play. I had a few mates that wanted to play, but no one wanted to run. I'm like, I love the storytelling, I love world building.
It's always how it starts.
Yep.
Yep.
And then I was stuck forever.
Not anymore.
Now I found my way out. But yeah, then
You're welcome, by the way.
I went straight to the Lost
Mines of Fandelver.
That's the one, the Lost Mines of Fandelver. And just to test the waters, I decided to run the first section where you come across some goblins in some dead horses and some goblins, and then you end up in the cave. So I built the cave out completely, just with
I've seen that cave.
yeah, just printed out pieces on foam, but just making some basic sizes so they could play through each actual section. And my guys loved it.
Yep.
So people that had never done roleplay before, I think it really did help, especially because that one, it jumps you straight into a couple of combats with some light roleplay. And having the maps in front of these guys. So I went out, I got them to build their characters. I went out and I just bought a mini for each of their actual characters from the WizKids set and painted them up.
Yep.
Super badly, but enough to put something on the table. Then I had the goblins from the old Lord of the Rings goblins. That's what we used.
Yep.
We played through. They loved it. They were next going to Fandelver. So I built Fandelver.
Of course you did.
Mostly with like paper printout style houses, but then I built one main tavern and the rest. But I had, when we ran the games, we'd sit around the living room, so everyone would be on the couch and we'd have battle maps in front of us, so that's where we play most of the role play. Then on the kitchen table, I had the whole town of Fandelver built.
That's insane to me.
And it wasn't perfect to scale, and a lot of it was a bit but it was enough that they could move their minis around the town, and at this point, I went hook, line, and sinker into it, and I got a whole heap of stuff. I got a 3D printer, started printing off like townsfolk and everything. Some of them were even just paper cutout minis and stuff, like just to represent, but there was something representing every single thing that I wanted in the town. So even some extra encounters I'd made up, I had little things in buildings where it's like, oh, there's something going on over here, and they could go around the whole town. So even outside of combat, I was using terrain.
Yeah.
To aid in the role play for these guys that I don't think they could have done too well. Like when we did Theatre of the Mind, where we went off to, it was a struggle for them.
Fair enough. I think if you're trying to engage like 100% brand new players, absolutely. I think having anything in front of them was always going to be good. Like even especially in a lot of these newer ones now, they have fold-out maps that come with them, so they have something to look at. But yeah, I definitely think having a full town built is definitely going to be pretty appealing to the brain.
And I love the craft side of it, as any of you probably know from what else I do. And like the building terrain is how we met.
Yeah, I know. Wacky.
Like,
God, that's wacky to me.
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned before, I started my channel, I was building stuff for, I always forget the name.
Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
His brain. Yeah, I was building the stuff for Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I was trying to build out the whole carnival, and Cody reached out and was like, how would you build a
merry-go-round, like a
carousel? And I'm like, well, there's one in the thing. I'll do it. So I did a video on that, and I sent the thing through, and then we just got to talking more and realized we didn't live that far away.
No.
And I was like, well,
come
down. And, he shouted me out in a couple of podcasts. I started mentioning the podcast that he was doing at the time on my channel. We decided to get together and build a couple of things for that podcast, which never got used, but we've got to find a way, I think, to bring them into ours eventually.
I know. Maybe. I think maybe on like a one-shot or something that I'm doing. I've got another one that I'm working on that's like just because I want to. That's not main campaign stuff. I might be able to make that work.
But yeah, we are terrain fiends.
Freaks. Capital F.
Like freaks. I don't think I could do combat without terrain.
I think there's been one instance in our campaign on the channel that I've ever had an interaction that was a combat that didn't have a map, and that was that was a bit of an escapade with some bandits. That was very quick. You don't always need it, I think, for like little things like that. But like when I know there's going to be big combats, I build the whole map from top to bottom. You guys would know. We'll probably impose some shots in there. Like I go extra, like extra with my maps. So like that, the Dungeons and Nerdettes map for the part 2 of Devastation, and the Undying League map in that city. I think that's probably one of the biggest maps I'd ever made. And then we just had some more encounters in the last few episodes in the wilderness where there was heaps of stuff on the board.
Yeah.
And I'm getting really, really extra. Well, I'm getting to the point now where I've got to go get a timber baseboard to fit my fold-out Pathfinder maps that I've got, because I want to have longer maps than just a square.
Yep.
So I'm going extra.
Oh, and I love it. Like as a player at the table, when we hit that moment and it can get put in front of you, and you suddenly go, "Oh wow, yeah, this is what's going on."
Yeah.
And like there are levels to it. Like I said, a lot of people can probably make do with just a drawn-out whiteboard or grid paper. But when you can throw down like a full environment and some stuff in there that might not really matter, but some trees around the side and some extra visuals, it's like it just
pulls it together.
it's like cinematic.
That's
Almost.
the word. It's
Like-
it's like a cinematic kind of
Yeah.
shot.
And even though half the combats only end up in one corner of the map, knowing what's around can affect the way you play the combat.
Yeah, exactly. Knowing that you've got things that interact there, it's good. You know what I mean? Like, which leads into something like look, when I was doing my first campaign ever, like sometimes I had the big whiteboard that I had the continent drawn on, and I had a little whiteboard that literally used to be my initiative tracker and my health tracker. That's how I used to do it. I ended up using that to actually draw quick maps whenever we were doing combat, like quick combat maps. And that was great. Like that was awesome. I recommend that. I think a whiteboard, is it A5 is like a big sheet? No, A3. A3. The lower.
That's A3.
That's A3. So it's bigger than A4. Yeah. So A5 is bigger again.
So A4 is half that. So A5 is double that.
Yeah. So an A3 or an A5 whiteboard would, if you're first getting into it, would be a really good start to get your mind around using like actual references for your combats and stuff. The reason I rely so heavily on terrain is because Brennan Lee Mulligan said it the best in the Game Masters of Exandria roundtable video. Some classes really get shafted on their class features if they can't see what the map looks like.
Yep.
As an example, we've got Monica playing Zepharis, the Changeling Rogue, in our campaign, and Monica is like Monica as a player, she is like just in on rogue shit. She, you know what I mean? She's always looking to assassinate, rolling stealth, hiding, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And I don't think there could ever be a point where she would feel super effective in combat if she couldn't see the map.
Yeah. And I think, if we talking classes, the custom class working at the skirmisher.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
Very dependent on your surroundings and your environment.
Yeah, that's the skirmisher custom class has specific abilities that realistically it's kind of, and I guess if you're a good theater of the mind DM, which I guarantee there are a million of you that are better than I am, if you describe it well enough, your player can download that information and do what they do and ask the right questions. For me, I like having the map there, and then those questions get raised, and for me, it's a quick answer. Like, you know, Mac doing up against the ropes in the Undying League game, you wanted to put that guy against the crate. The verbiage is an impassable object.
Yeah.
The crate is not an impassable object.
There, I get to look at it and go, is that an option? Whereas if there's no image of that there, it's like, well, that would have never been brought up, and it allows the opportunity. Exactly.
There's a lot of classes that I think can sometimes get shafted in those instances.
Yeah.
And then keeping track of movement, spell effects, all that sort of stuff, it gets hard.
Range is a big one.
Range is hard, man.
Like you're saying, if you've got the right combination at the table, so if you've got a really good person, like a really good DM to describe the theatre of the mind situation, and you've got the right kind of players that can take that information on and see it in their mind's eye, it could work great. But I think those people are few and far between, and getting both of them at the table together isn't always going to happen. So
No.
that's where terrain at whatever level you can makes a big difference. But the level we like to take it to is to present that cinematic immersion to our characters,
Yeah.
to our players. So when that moment comes out and it's there, they can see the world that they're actually a part of. Not just imagining it, but particularly for combat situations, I think that works and is important because in general roleplay, everyone can have their own version in their mind's eye. It doesn't affect the others. But if two people, even players on the table, are seeing the place differently, they're going to struggle to, like everyone has to work and collaborate in those situations.
It is.
Mechanically.
Yes, exactly. Party synergy can be, for lack of a better term, party synergy can be jeopardized, in my opinion, if there's no map.
Yeah.
So,
and going away from just maps necessarily, we can look at, say, this guy right here, which I built for our Feywild one-shot. This wasn't really even a piece for terrain. Like, it was off the battlefield towards the back of the DM screen. This was a goal. This is what they're driving towards. You've got to get to this thing. So having that there was just this, like, driving force that painted the picture. And again, I can bring it back to you. For me, a large part of why I love terrain is the idea of cinematic immersion. Where everyone...
I feel like I'm there.
When they feel like they're a part of the world, and they can look at it and go, I'm there.
I had that moment happen in the airships game, because again, I don't get to play very often, so when I do get to play, I go very extra. But, don't get me wrong, I love the Feywild game, but there was just something about the airships game that just spoke to me on a different level about for some reason, my enjoyment of it. Where, when I was going through it in my brain, I was there. I was the half-elf, telekinetic super mutant shooting Cyclops laser eye beams at a black and red Owlin across the deck of another ship. We're flying on an airship and a pirate ship that flies came up next to us. I saw it there because it was there in front of me.
I was going to say, how different would that have felt if instead of the big model airship and this pirate ship being on there, surrounded by bits of fluff to represent clouds on a blue map, if that had just been two printouts of ships?
It just wouldn't be the same.
It's different.
Yeah.
Having this 3D thing you can look through and it's I'm there. And then if we go to that, the airships campaign is similar to how I ran Fandelver back in the day, because the entire game we had the ship in front of us, even when we weren't in combat.
Exactly.
So you guys could kind of look at the ship and be like, I want to move around to this part of the ship. And
it's like pulling up a HUD on a video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it worked well for that game, particularly because the whole game was set on the airship until we hit the islands at the but it was one base place that it was all taking place in. So it was a lot easier to do that. It wasn't, we have to explain a new environment every 5 seconds. This is the hub of where you're going to be for most of this game.
Yeah, and that is effective. That's effective.
Yeah.
That is an effective tool.
Yeah.
Which again, 90% of this video is you don't have to do this. This is just a topic that we brought up that was this is why we do it, and maybe it'll get some more people into, expanding their creative outlet.
Yeah.
And trying something new.
And if you don't know how to do it, check out the other channel. So I have a whole channel dedicated to how to make this stuff, from really basic level things like little garden beds and stuff I've been doing recently, which are just smaller bits of scatter terrain, magnetic, modularity stuff, all the way up to big things like that. And what do we got over here? Here's a teaser for what we have coming. Big hobbit holes, and this is completely unnecessary. You don't need that to take to this level. I love this stuff, so this is going to just look cool on my shelf.
It does look cool on the shelf.
Yeah. So there's stuff out there like myself and so many other amazing creators, Black Magic Crafts, the first one that comes to mind. Miscast Terrain down in, I think he's based in Melbourne. I absolutely love his stuff too. There's so many people out there that do it in the wargaming space and the RPG space for making terrain at different levels. So really introductory stuff all the way up to stuff that's way beyond anything I could ever do.
Yeah, like look at there's a gentleman in one of the Facebook groups we're in where he runs a D&D 5e campaign, but it's Lego.
Yeah.
And he builds like their actual like it's like the Lego movie. Like they know that they're Lego and they're little
that's
Lego
great.
people. But like they're still it's like fantasy and all the maps are Lego maps that he's built.
Lego have just released Dungeons and Dragons Lego.
There you go. No excuse.
I think there's a one shot out there. I know like
Anjali Bomali
ran
GM.
it,
Luis Carrazzo was on there. Ginny D.
Ginny D. There's a couple of others and it was all set within their stuff. But Lego in general, you could make up stuff from whatever you want. There's Mega Blocks as well. It's got a whole heap of different ranges.
Duplo.
Yeah, like I know the Lego is quite expensive. So
yeah,
but
that's
Lego
true.
has some really cool Viking stuff. Like there's a lot of different ways you can come at it without needing to do the stuff from scratch. But oh boy, does it make a difference?
Yeah, it in my opinion it does. But that we've touched on it a bit, but that brings up a good point, which is cost. Cost, money spent. Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. The amount of money that I've spent to build the collection that I have over the last 3 years is
A house deposit.
probably. Am I going to buy a house? No, because I'd rather build a cool
I'd rather
dungeon.
build tiny little ones.
Yeah, I can build. Why would I buy a big house when I can make 8 little ones?
The only reason I want to buy a house is so I've got a space to build more little houses.
Yeah, you're smarter than me. I am working on getting a house. It's just hard right now.
It's a mess.
But it's realistically, this is probably where I'm going to start. Like, this is probably the sector where I'd start offering advice, I think.
Get a 3D printer.
So that is always one that we've like. I'm
We'll come back to that after. I think.
Yeah, I'm a very firm believer in 3D printing. So let's exclude the fact that you've bought the books, right? You bought the DMG, which Monster Book,
already quite expensive.
Player's Handbook. Yeah, I know it's cheaper to almost get them on D&D Beyond, but barely.
Yeah, but it's nice to have physical books.
I have digital and physical of both because it's just like if I have a moment where I've got to think about it and I don't know where my phone is, I'll quickly run and flip my book. So excluding buying the books, excluding buying 1 or 2 sets of dice. You know, Chessex dice are about $11 a pop.
Yeah, you can get them cheap.
Easy.
You jump on Amazon. I think I got like 30 sets of dice for like $20.
Yeah, and they're good like plastic ones
Yeah,
too.
they're just basic plastic ones. Whenever we run a one shot, I just give a set to everyone at the table just for fun. You can get that stuff for pretty.
Exactly. You can find more cost-effective ways to do it. I think after you've got your books and your dice and all that sort of stuff, and obviously this is not including the fact like if your players get their own stuff and you don't have to spend money for your players, a whiteboard to start with is always going to be a good investment. I like an A3 or an A5 whiteboard where they're big and you can do some like decent little map designs on them. Great. Or going to an art shop and buying the holeless 1-inch grid paper.
Yeah.
Is always really good. Like that's how Matt Mercer did it for months on CR before he started getting Dwarven Forge.
I've seen a lot of people that get the grid paper and laminate a square the size they like, so they can just use whiteboard markers on the grid paper. Roll it up, put it aside, pin it down or blue tack it down at your table. When you're done, you can draw and remove as you need to go.
I also really liked when I bought the whiteboard for my first campaign, it came with magnets.
Yep.
And I used to write the name of the enemy on the top of the magnet and then move it around the board. That was always really good. I've heard
You can get
Othello pieces, like you can whiteboard on the bottom of them and use them as enemy tokens.
Print out stuff. You can find a lot of free stuff on Reddit or purchased stuff that's a bit more better. But you can find little printouts of characters that just you fold the paper over and you put them down. So there's ways to do it all on the cheap.
There's absolutely 101 ways you can do it to be cost effective. I think realistically, yeah, prints paper, grid paper from the craft shop, and then a whiteboard. And I think that's all you need, honestly, to get started. And then once you're a couple of months down the line, if you decide you want to start going big, I personally buy Dwarven Forge because I'm a bit of a huss for it. I like spending the money on it. But I reckon that the first terrain tiles that anyone should buy are actually the WizKids Warlock tiles. They're about $120 for the base set box for the dungeon set, which also has wooden floors, which is good. It means you can utilize them you flip them and they've got wood on the other side.
See, I don't think I'd agree with that as
Really?
a first start. If you're going to be spending a couple $100, buy yourself an Ender 3.
Oh, yeah, true. See, I didn't know anything about 3D printing when I started.
So I'm big on the 3D printing space. I know a lot of people in the crafting space don't necessarily like it, that it's cheating or something like that, but if your means to an end to build a piece for your table, that's the point. You want something cool to throw on the table. With things like Thingiverse and Cults out there, there are so many free models, including huge ranges of like open lock tiles, for pretty much any circumstance you could want. So I'm going to talk in Australian dollars here, the Ender 3 V3, which is the newest one I got, which honestly I'm right now having some issues with, but I'm hoping it'll be a pretty quick fix, is 250 Australian dollars. That's like 150 US. Then, again, Australian dollars, $30 for a roll of filament.
Yeah.
It can get cheaper, it can get more expensive depending, you get something basic. I could print out all the tiles I could possibly need for a whole campaign almost.
Realistically, yeah.
For less than $100, I could print huge ranges, like ships like this pirate ship here, with like things like dice towers. This is a free model that I've just painted up, but it's something really extra cool to put down on the table. I've got to have some more stuff around here that I've 3D printed. I think it's all packed away mostly, but full-size buildings, tiles, trees, environments. With a very basic spray paint, you can have a fully immersive table. And yes, it's a bit of an upfront cost the first time, but honestly, over the space of building terrain or buying terrain, you end up spending more.
Yeah, I do both. I buy my tiles, but I print the key things that I need, the little bits, like my scatter, my trees, my hills, all that sort of stuff. The Ender that I have currently doesn't work, so I've got to put it back together.
It's my old one.
I'm trying to put it back together.
So that is something with the printers to be aware of. The older ones particularly take a bit more work. That was the first D&D model I ever bought.
Owlbear. I don't know, for some reason I just had to pick it up.
Yeah. So I had all my old Lord of the Rings stuff, and I went and had a look, and I saw the owlbear. I didn't understand the lore of it or anything, but I'm like, that thing's cool. I want it. So I got some paints, I bought that, and
Hell yeah.
On the track of minis, buying minis, in the 3D printing space, a resin printer is another thing. Yes, all this stuff's going to be a bit of an upfront cost, and there are materials and processes you need to learn to do it. If you are going to get more into this space, and after a while of playing you decided, I'm doing this, I'm committing to this hobby, could not recommend it more.
It's so worth it. I've printed so many miniatures for our campaign that are base coated and ready to be painted. I just haven't painted them yet because I printed them like 9 months in advance. Yeah. But it gives me a project, which is good.
I haven't bought a mini since I bought my printer.
I think I've only bought minis to... I've bought the STLs to be printed by our friend Yasashi Kyoijin Studios. He's a 3D sculptor, a friend of the show. Sometimes he's got a real high fidelity 3D printer. So for my big bad minis, I get him to print them and then I put them together and then I paint them. But man, it's worth it. I printed 8 miniatures the other night and it tells you the cost value on the site and it cost me $1.
Yeah.
For 8 large minis, I think it was.
That'd be $100 if you were to buy them.
If you were to buy them in that CS grade plastic, it's insane.
They're a little bit more breakable and things, so you might not get the longevity out of them sometimes, but depending on the materials you print in, you can get more expensive print materials that'll last longer.
Even that's changing now because they've got CS grade plastic UV resin.
That's what I mean. You can buy better materials.
The new resin that I have actually has a bit of give in it.
There you go.
So I'm like this is awesome.
Because then you got situations like we got some guys down here because all my mini table fell over the other week and we broke a hole. We lost a heap of our guys. I'll show a close up after. I think.
Yeah, poor little Tommy's he's footless.
Yeah, but a little bit of glue fixes that up too. And because we've got the Mini, we can reprint it.
Just print them again.
Like, I have some ideas coming up for something, which I can't say because I'll spoil it.
Yeah,
I might
don't
have to
spoil
bring
it.
it up. It's a plan for one shot, but the ability to multi-print stuff is going to be a big part of that.
Hell yeah.
Okay, not like that. You want to do a shapeshifter? You can print doubles of all your characters. So
Oh, the old doppelganger trick.
you can have doppelganger situations where they actually look like your players. Like, it is costly, but there are other advantages depending on how skilled you are with it too. A mate of mine runs a hydroponic gardening channel, and it's all about 3D printing stuff for his garden. So fully 3D printed hydroponic systems. So there are other ways to use it. It becomes a tool that can be very useful in the rest of your life if you know how to use it.
Great for presents too. Great for
Yep.
gifts for people.
I did a heap of trophies for my cousin's bachelorette party. My sister was the maid of honor, and they were doing competitions. And she's like, "Can you get it?" So I just hacked together a couple of things. I've got a video over on my channel that still does surprisingly well. I just printed them out, sprayed them gold, and then everyone had custom trophies they could hand out at the end of the day for a keepsake. Cost maybe $2 in material.
That's insane to me. I did it for Monica's partner Steve. It was his birthday over the weekend, so to do something for him, because I didn't have the money to get like a real gift, so I was like, I'll make him something because that's worth it.
Yep.
So I spent $10 and bought the file online from Colts 3D, and I printed him Illidan from World of Warcraft, and I painted him like a statue.
Yeah, there you go.
And now he's got a little Illidan on his desk, and he loved it. He loved it.
It's like the
I print stuff for Bailey all the time, paints it, he puts it on his art studio.
Asterion that I did for
Monica,
Vaughn.
puts her headphones on it.
We did this for Bailey. I've got one as well. The claw from
The Velociraptor
Jurassic
talon.
Park. Just little cool things, and these can be props for your game as well. Like,
There's a coin up there that I'm going to spray paint gold before I leave today,
like, I don't have enough.
as a keepsake from the Airships game.
Grab one of those buildings. Here's an example. So, I absolutely love this stuff. You guys have probably seen it, tested, have done videos on these.
Love
guys.
Hagglethorn Hollow.
Yeah, this is from the Hagglethorn Hollow kit. I backed this Kickstarter back in the day. Printable scenery of the guys. These guys, like Johnny from Printable Scenery, was a part of the Weta Workshop team, probably
Yeah.
still is. And this is a 3D print, so I can print as many of these as I want. I think there's about $2 worth of material there, and they can come apart, you can play inside, you can twist them around to get different versions. This is the advantage of 3D printing, particularly in our space for terrain.
Mm-hmm.
Having that on the table versus having a book or a box to say it's a house, it does so much for the table.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
there is an upfront cost.
But it's only one, and then you're cheering.
Yeah.
Another tip that I recommend for people that want to try and, if you're slowly getting your foot in the door on table stuff for immersion, I've seen a few people do it, is go on your free image hosting sites, like I think like Shutterstock has a range of free pictures and all that sort of stuff that you can pick. I think
There's another website we use quite a bit that give free stuff if you're not using it.
I can't recall what it's
Openly.
called. I don't know what the name is.
And we use it for some of our random background images or something like that. I'll use them, and as long as you reference it, or if you're not doing it commercially, they're pretty cool about that.
Yeah, but I find sometimes I've seen, not myself, but I've seen other people run games where whenever they go to a place in a setting, they have the picture and they hang it over the front of the screen, and that gives the players something to look at, and even that initiates an emotional response, which is really what you want.
We're going to come back to last week, but a lot of people don't like it, but I think if you're not making money off it and doing presented, AI can be a cool way to get imagery. It's a tough topic in the world of art and AI, which...
Don't like it.
Yep. Watch the last episode. We have Bailey on the table, who's a digital artist, and we went a lot more into the nuance of this conversation. But I still personally think for those of you using it for your home games, you're not... The AI systems are still iffy because have they stolen the art and all that, but as we said, the genie's out of the bottle and it's not going backwards. So I think if you can use it to make your home game better, I personally think go for it, but be respectful about the idea of what AI art is doing.
Yeah.
If you do have the money and the ability, purchase art packs or find something online that exists, it might be morally the better choice. But it is a tool out there now. And for most of us who are just running games in our own house for a couple of mates, your call how you feel about it.
Yep,
but
that's on
we
you.
know that most of you people out there are probably using it for making memes and shit anyway. So
Memes are good.
as we said, it's for the meme, it's fine. If it's for
Money, you're a dummy.
yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of this stuff costs a lot of money.
It does. It does cost a lot of money. And
Well, it depends actually. You can play a game for free.
you can play a game.
Download
Yeah.
some basic things online. Fandelver's like what, $20? What's that turtle doing?
He's leaning on the pump and the bubbles are getting aggro.
He's always making a. He's always distracting us.
He's always making a mess.
But yeah, there's ways you can approach it for almost nothing. Get Fandelver for about $20. It comes with pre-made character sheets. You can run that whole game theory of the mind, or with the maps that they present you. Like, they give you a few decent maps in that game. All you need is pens, paper, and dice. And that starter pack comes with all of that. There's also the I Spy a Peak the Dragon of I Spy a Peak.
The starter essentials kit. Yeah.
Kit, which gives you everything you need to run a game. I personally think Fandelver's a much better option. I think that's a great starting story.
Yeah, it is good. The only thing that I Spy a Peak has that Fandelver doesn't is the fact that it gives you sidekicks for in case there's only one player to run the adventure. But it's good. Yeah, I think utilising any of those starter kits. Now there's the new one, Dragon of the Stormwreck Isles. That's great. I bought that as well just to kind of have a squiz of what it was like. Not much different from any other one, but I like to evaluate the content. But yeah, all you need is your pen, paper, your dice. The starter kits come with the rest. You don't need to go ham into this sort of stuff. It's fun, yeah, don't get me wrong. But
once you really start getting into it, it's fun in itself. Even when I wasn't running games, I love making the models. There's a whole other side to that. Having the books is just cool for fantasy nerds out there. Anyone's into world building and fantasy.
I like having the books on the shelf.
It's cool to have them, and it's fun to read through them. I can just read through the monster manual for the fun of it.
Yeah.
A good module where it's particularly location setting modules, not story modules. Those setting books, it just gets the fantasy nerd in me going.
Yeah, I got the Planescape books a while ago.
Yeah, like I
So
really
sick.
love the Wildmount book.
Yeah.
Because it's just about the setting. There's not a story to follow. It's just, it gives you the rules of the area, and like if you move to that area, it gives you the ideas for you to grow from yourself. But back on, I guess, our topic of spending money, every book's going to cost you $60 to $80. We're talking Australian prices here, so these will probably vary depending on where in the world you are. But it's roughly $1.50 Australian gets you $1 US. Give you guys a vibe.
Yeah.
Terrain's going to cost you, even if you make it, all the elements do add up. There's a lot of stuff out there showing you how to do cheaper things, but over time, you eventually have everything. I have so much stuff here because every time I've done a build where I need one thing, you only use a fifth of it or something like that. So over time, like I can do whole builds now where I don't need to buy anything. Like this whole build right here was done using things that I had in this room.
Already accumulated.
I accumulated bits and pieces of this from other builds and got to put them together. But even in saying that, there's probably $20 worth of grass tufts on there. So the level you want to take things to, you can go from very minimal to maximal.
Yeah.
That includes props. You can do basic printouts and stuff, or you can build props, or you can buy props. You don't need props for the game, but I think they're another cool way to expand on it, but it's just more money again.
Exactly. More money spent. In the end, the point that we're getting to, the point that we were trying to get to in this specifically is there's no right and wrong. There's only what we do versus like what I do versus what Seb does versus what you do versus what your friend does.
There's no one way to play
There is no one, yeah, exactly. There is no one way to play it, and it all comes down to just a conversation with your players Like, you know, even going back to the top of the conversation, at the end of the day, you're going to know exactly what you need by the first conversation you have with your players to the opening seconds of your introduction to the game. Mm-hmm. You know, how much role play is there going to be compared to combat, or is it all up to the players being able to choose what that's going to be versus, okay, is bringing terrain to this board going to be worth it for the player's immersion versus just doing it theatre of the mind style? And then once you've gotten through those two elements, you can decide whether you want to spend the money.
Once you know your players. Because I think that was a big one for me. Phandelver, half the table were great. They could do it by themselves. We'd play for like 8 hours, just theatre of the mind sometimes, just when everyone was having drinks, we'd be sitting around and I'd just be running them through theatre of the mind situations.
Yeah.
And they loved it. A few of the guys couldn't really do that, which is fair enough. They weren't big gamers. They weren't big into the fantasy stuff. So they enjoyed when we played it, but they struggled to picture the things. But as I learned which players I could, one campaign had a lot more terrain, the other one didn't. But I also really loved immersing players. That's the creative part of me. It's why I like making film. It's like why I like making terrain. Getting people immersed in a circumstance was just...
Icing on the cake, yeah.
Like when I did Icewind Dale, I closed every window of the house. I got a Aurora Borealis style light, and I crammed the aircon down to as low as it would go. So when they entered the room, it was freezing cold, dim light, and there was like, you know, the aurora and sky there's meant to be in that game.
That would be sick for a home game. I'm not going to lie, I'd love to do that. I'd love to experience that.
So I had them all entering Icewind Dale from a trade van. Right away, they'd just come over the Icespire Peak or whatever what's the spines called? The north of...
I don't know, I can't remember.
Basically, they just pass through the north of the kingdom or the area and they go into that land and then they get knocked in by an avalanche and they're stuck. Right. And they're the only ones to survive, so they kind of form a party.
Yeah.
But from the get-go, it's them cresting over and suddenly temperature drops, the sun seems to disappear and the thing comes out and there's just so much immersion. But you don't need to go to that level.
You don't need to. No, you're not at all. It's fun.
You should.
Yeah, you should. You don't have to, but you should. But yeah, you're gonna know how to run the game within the first session. I think you get a good idea.
Yeah.
I personally believe that every first session should have a combat, so people can get used to their players and like their characters and stuff.
It's a good way to introduce them to each other as well.
Yeah. But heavy RP versus heavy combat, you're only going to figure it out as you play. Terrain versus theatre of the mind, you're only going to figure it out as you play. And then only then, once you know what people like, you can justify the money, I think.
And what you like. It's really, if you're the DM, most of this comes down to you.
That's true.
If you're a player, talk to your DM and help them. Like, there's a lot of costs that go in, not just time that takes for the DM to do this, but the costs of terrain and minis and all this. As a player, you might buy your own mini. You might buy one set of dice and print out some paper. DM has to buy books, has to buy terrain or build terrain, has to design the whole thing for you. So if you can somehow put in towards that, I think do it, because they're spending a hell of a lot of time doing stuff for you to give you an amazing time at the table. Whether it's monetary, whether it's bringing snacks, whether it's offering help in whichever way you can, it does mean a lot to those running the game. It's one of the biggest reasons why I know from going as the forever DM to actually playing at this table, every single week I'm asking Cody if there's anything he needs me to build for him or put together, just so we can get stuff on the table and give him one less thing to worry about and have to spend the money on. And
yeah, not that stops me.
No.
Not that I don't do it anyway.
Or even what we did for your birthday. So for Cody's last birthday, everyone at the table threw in money and we bought him a big batch of Dungeon Forge because we knew he loved them.
Yeah, the caverns, it was awesome.
And I had to gaslight him into not buying them himself because he kept wanting them. Like, I don't think you need those ones, man. We can build that. You don't need it.
You should have let me. You would have had double as many.
He was so close to buying it. I was like, maybe get the other ones instead.
I did. I bought the wilderness ones. Yeah, I bought the wilds instead. But God, one thing I hate about that, you have to buy the tree separate. It annoys the fuck out of me. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
That's a spiteful conversation.
Look, there's a few things we could probably do a whole thing on how we've tweaked Dungeon Forge, what we've done, making our own magnetic bases, figuring out how to pin trees in.
Oh yeah,
There's ways to do it. It doesn't look perfect, but it looks good enough on the table.
I think it was it was good enough for what I wanted at the time, which was I wanted to have tall trees in the way. And
Yeah.
So we did that. But that's something that I think will come along later when we get into like map building and all that sort of stuff, and doing some like more behind the scenes map videos.
Let us know as well. We're thinking about doing some stuff where we take a whole heap of the terrain that I've built and we've accumulated and just building out tables as a steal this encounter. So we'll build out a map, pull out some minis and come up with an encounter with some ideas and some different stuff for you guys to use yourself. Then ideally it's with either basic stuff you could print or get a hold of, or using terrain that I've built on my other channel that you could build yourself. If you've got any interest in that, let us know, because like we're saying, we want to do a bit more different content on here and maybe try and tie my channel in a bit more to what we're doing with Tomes, cross people over a little bit. But yeah, just let us know.
Yeah, put in the doobly-doo and we'll doodly-doo. There you go.
I think we've hit all the topics we want for this episode.
I think that's a nice, healthy length.
As always, comments, ideas, questions, your thoughts. Tell us why we're wrong below.
We've been loving like people getting on and actually leaving, like, you know, having conversations with us has been the coolest thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We definitely copped a bit of heat with that Warhammer escapade, but you know, I rode that wave and I stand by what I said.
We learned a lot from it too, though, because
We
some
did,
of the
actually.
stuff we say is just from what we know. So a lot of people have come in with their own sides of things and told us how they see it. Same, we've had a really good couple of comments from the last one, the AI topic, which we only just released a couple of days ago for us. So there's only been a couple of comments, but they're really interesting. And look, you can come on and be a dick about it. We don't care. It's all engagement. But if you come in more from an understanding of wanting to have that conversation, you're more likely to get through to us. And we want to have those topics of conversation. So we're already putting some more questions together for next time Bailey's on to talk about AI, based on your responses. Any and all topics, let us know. We'll bring them up. We're hoping to get some other people on the channel. Other people from the channel on here eventually, and maybe some people from the wider community. So I'll say it again, if you're in the Gold Coast area, or even if you're just really passionate about it, we can even jump on Zoom and do a kind of call that way and maybe put something together. We want to open it up to everyone. So
That's why this show exists.
yeah, the link to our Discord will be in the description. That's our link tree, so it takes you to all our socials and the Discord and everything. Follow us, share us, love us, hate us, do what you need to do.
Need to come up with an outro.
Cut to black.